Call this meeting to order at 11:10. Vice President.
Here.
Director of Internal Affairs.
Here.
Director of Finance.
Here.
Director of Legislative Affairs.
Present.
Director of Student Technology, absent excused. Director of Outreach, absent excused. Approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
It's blurry. I motion to approve the agenda.
I second.
Moved by Ben, seconded by Moira. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Approval of the minutes. We'll need to table these again and last week's.
Okay. Motion to table this week's or last week's minutes and the minutes from the meeting before, right? So it'd be last meeting and the meeting. The motion two.
could be last week's minutes and the previously tabled minutes. Like that
Yeah.
would work.
Motion to table these minutes with the previously tabled minutes.
Is there a second?
I second.
Moved by Ben, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Now is the time for public comment. Welcome and thank you to those members of the public who are present in this meeting today. This segment of the meeting provides the executive board an opportunity to hear new concerns or new perspectives on current issues related to the UW-Tacoma student body. The executive board will neither discuss nor debate topics raised in public comment. This is not because we don't value commenters' perspectives, but to ensure that any related action is taken transparently before a duly notified public at a future meeting. However, directors may ask clarifying questions of those giving public comment or request to meet to gain further insight after the meeting. In addition, ASUWT is committed to fostering a constructive and respectful environment in these meetings. As such, we kindly ask that all remarks made during public comment reflect professionalism, respect, and come from a place of mutual understanding that we're all here to advocate on behalf of students. With that, I begin public comment. We have two members of the public present who are also on the agenda. Is there anything additional you guys would like to say? I see some head shakes. We will move down to unfinished business where we have our Universal Access Committee bylaws. Just to reiterate what I talked about before, we had discussed this a couple weeks prior. The Student Technology Fee Committee was unable to have quorum in order to meet to discuss the exec board's recommendations for us to approve, which really just boiled down to my strong recommendation that we put in there that all campuses get access to the Universal Access Committee by SharePoint. Since they weren't able to meet, they can't make those changes, but we're the only campus that hasn't approved this yet. So if there's no other oppositions to the changes, I strongly encourage a motion to approve.
I motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Alicia, seconded by Ben. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Great. Now we move down to new business where we have Title IX coming to present. Feel free to come up. And feel free to take a spot at the podium. Google Slides are already up. You don't have to do anything. Just click on the tab and we'll be able to turn around and see.
Hello, so good to be here with you today. My name is John Beck. I work for the Office of the Title IX Coordinator here at University of Washington. I am a training and communication specialist. So among other things, I come out and I talk to folks around the community. I also create lots of communication materials, websites, things like that. And before that, I came here in 2014 to the University of Washington as a grad student. Did my PhD in political science, and then I was a lecturer for a few years in law, societies, and justice and political science. And I even got to teach here on the Tacoma campus, which I know that I'm being recorded, so I'm going to be careful with what I say. But there is something special about the Tacoma students. So I'll try not to say anything bad about the other ones. I really enjoyed all the time that I've had here. The other cool thing about being here today is that this is the best commute for me because I live on MLK Junior Way. So literally like a 10-minute walk, super easy, and super glad to be here with you all today. But so you heard that I work with the Office of the Title IX Coordinator. That's what it says on your agenda, Title IX. And yet on my slides here, it says Civil Rights Compliance Office. And so I'm here today to share some big news, some big changes that are happening at the University of Washington. And the first and perhaps most important, although we're going to wrap up on the most challenging, aspect of it is that we are announcing a new office, the UW Civil Rights Compliance Office. Now, this office isn't brand new in the sense of new personnel. All of the employees already exist, but they're spread out across 4 offices and then a sort of 5th non-office. So what we're doing is we're reorganizing the Office of the Title IX Coordinator. So that includes case management, the training and communications folks, things like that. The ADA Coordinator, so that's the disability rights stuff. Title IX is sex and gender-based discrimination and harassment and sexual misconduct. The ADA Office of Disability Rights. We're also taking in hearings, which runs the hearings when there's been some sort of conduct issue. And investigations, which conducts those investigations. And then I said there's like this 5th area. There's this Title VI area, which you might have heard somewhat in the news recently. The federal administration is paying a lot of attention to Title VI. Title VI is about the prohibition of discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin. So the Civil Rights Compliance Office is going to take on all those responsibilities: the sex and gender-based discrimination, race, color, and national origin-based discrimination, disability-based discrimination, et cetera. And I say et cetera because we've got here on the side the protected characteristics. And so we've got age, citizenship, disability, ethnicity, race, sex, gender, military status, and more. What we mean by protected characteristics are that these are identity factors that are singled out in law, usually in federal civil rights law and state civil rights law, as factors that we prohibit discrimination based on. So you can't discriminate on the basis of military status, right? If somebody's active duty or a veteran. You can't discriminate on the basis of sex. So that's what we're talking about there. And that's what our office is going to be responsible for. And we're really doing this for a number of different reasons. The first, most important reason is to improve support for our students and our employees at the University of Washington. Right now, we've got all these different offices, and not only those ones that we're reorganizing, but we've also got all these other offices across our 3 campuses that handle issues like this. And so if you experience some form of discrimination, harassment, or sexual misconduct on one of these protected characteristics today, you have to figure out, where am I going to go? Which door do I knock on for help, right? We're going to change that by becoming the front door for all of those concerns. So we think that we can do a better job because, of course, when you think about yourself, you're not just a young person or an older person. You're not just a woman, a man, a trans person, et cetera, right? You hold lots of different identities at once. And so by bringing these under the same roof, we think that we can better support our students and our employees. So that's our first most important reason. The second reason is because it allows us to watch for patterns that could be contributing to a hostile environment, right? You could have a single incident that it doesn't itself violate UW policy or federal law, but if you've got dozens of those little incidents coming together, that could actually add up to a violation of federal civil rights law. So by centralizing reporting and coordinating our response, we can watch for those patterns a little bit better. And then a third is a compliance thing. We are in some ways required to make some of these changes. So the University of Washington on January 19th, 2025, that was the last day of the Biden administration, they signed what's called a resolution with the Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Education. And basically what happened there was that our office, the Title IX office, we had already hired private consultants to look at our practices, and they had made lots of recommendations about things we could be doing better to serve students and employees. And then the Department of Education, responding to some concerns, came in and we agreed to make some improvements. And so this is one of those improvements that we're making is the Civil Rights Compliance Office. And as I'm going to be talking about, we're also changing the policy a little bit in relation to that. So we do have a new executive order coming out sometime in July. The exact date is sort of fluctuating, but it has to be in July because we are obligated to report back to the Department of Education by August 1st. And this new policy, it's taking content from about 5 different existing policies and merging them together. So we're consolidating this policy just like we're consolidating those offices. And it's going to do a bunch of different things. It's going to clarify university employee obligations. It's going to require trainings of staff and faculty and students, I'm sorry to say. It will require reporting of protected class discrimination and harassment. That's where we're going to end this presentation because I think that's the more challenging part that you might have some questions about. It's going to identify that one central office, that Civil Rights Compliance Office. It includes a statement on free speech and academic freedom, which we think is as important as ever. It addresses the types of conduct that might be in violation of UW policy, but aren't in violation of this policy, right? Because we've got that protected class aspect of it. You could still get in trouble for discrimination or harassment that's not based on protected class if it violates UW policy in other ways. And it refers to companion procedures. So we're going to have some companion documents to help explain how all of this stuff is going to work. And among other things, this new policy, it very clearly defines what we consider to be prohibited conduct for the Civil Rights Compliance Office. None of the stuff on this slide is new, okay? All of this is already prohibited conduct, but we do offer expanded definitions of all of these different things. So very broadly, we're talking here about discrimination, harassment, and sexual misconduct, but we break it down into different areas, including things like sexual exploitation, stalking, indecent exposure, dating violence, the different types of things that students and employees might be experiencing at the University of Washington and the community, et cetera, that we want to be able to prevent and respond to. So we've got this all outlined in our policy, and I'm glad to talk about any of that more if you'd like to. Now, let's say that you or someone you know has possibly experienced one of these things that's prohibited, right? What should you do in that scenario? How can our office help? So we encourage a report, okay? So by encourage, what I mean is, like, as a student, most of the time you will never be obligated to report, right? Nobody's requiring you to do anything. But if you experience something like what we see on the slide, or you have a friend that experiences something like what we see on the slide, we want you to reach out to us. And the best way to reach out to us is to submit a report. Today, that's called the Title IX report, but starting in July, that's going to be called the Civil Rights and Title IX report. Now, I want to highlight some things. When you reach out to us with a Civil Rights and Title IX report, what does that not do? It does not initiate an investigation. Okay, so I know some people are really concerned, oh, it's going to get somebody in trouble or something like that. Well, it might, but it will not immediately initiate an investigation. Most of the time, we only investigate with the participation of the impacted party. The only reason we would investigate without participation of the impacted party is if we have a serious concern for the safety of the community, okay? Instead, all we're doing is we are going to give outreach to the impacted party or the person supporting the impacted party. Because if you are not required to report and you're doing it, you can report everything anonymously, right? You can use an anonymous email, you can withhold the impacted party's name, and then we'll respond to that anonymous email with the support, the resources, everything that we want that impacted party to have, okay? So that's the point of making a report, is that we can provide you with all of those different resources. We can make it very clear to you what you can do next, who you can reach out to, what sorts of support are available, and so on. So we're asking you to make a report even if you are not obligated to. You can do that, again, with that Civil Rights and Title IX reporting form from July. It's the Title IX report today. And when that happens, a case manager is going to get involved in the situation. Now, case managers I work with them closely. They're really fabulous people. They're very, very kind, thoughtful, empathetic, and caring. And what they're going to do is they are going to assess that report right away, and they're going to look for safety concerns, right? Am I worried about the safety of this individual, and how can we intervene to make sure that everybody is safe in the community? They're going to evaluate for patterns of bad behavior that might be contributing to a hostile environment. They're going to make that outreach either to the impacted party or the person supporting them to provide them with everything that they need and to ask if they'd like to have an intake meeting and to learn more about their options. If they do that intake meeting, they're going to learn more about investigations, hearings, alternative dispute resolution, non-formal ways to do things. A lot of times we do educational talks with parties that have done something that we think is bad, if it's sort of on the lower level, right? And we can nip it in the bud. We can try to stop that from getting worse early on. So they'll work with that impacted party to help them understand their options. They're not going to do pretty much anything without that impacted party's participation and consent, okay? Beyond that, they will also connect that impacted party or others to other resources around campus, maybe disability resources if that's necessary, Safe Campus, Live Well, whatever we've got floating around in the different campuses to support students. We've got a lot of great health promotion professionals here at the UW-Tacoma campus, for example, that we might want to connect you with in response to a report. So that's kind of big picture what those case managers are going to do. And we try to keep this as sort of friendly, consensual, that you have to choose to participate as possible. And those case managers are really quite caring and empathetic. All right. So I mentioned that the more difficult part, and the part where there may be some questions in the room, we'll see, are the change in reporting obligations. Now, again, my assumption is that everyone in this room right now is probably not obligated to report, although you'll find that there are some exceptions, even if you are a student, okay? So this first box here is this yellow box. If we're talking about a situation involving a student has either done something that's prohibited or has experienced something that's prohibited, okay? And an employee becomes aware of that, that employee will be required to share the information they have. However, because it's involving a student, the impacted student, the student who has allegedly experienced the bad thing, they can ask that the employee withhold their name, okay? So say your professor in your class finds out that you disclose something to them, right? Then the professor would be required to report, but they would not be required to share your name if you don't want them to. So what would happen is our case managers would send that information back to your professor, and then that professor, we would expect them to share that information with you, all right? So that's that. And we say limited exceptions apply. So we're thinking here in terms of like, sometimes you might be writing an essay, and you might be revealing something that happened to you or a friend. Right? And so we're going to accept that from the policy. We're going to say something in a written assignment does not count as a disclosure for this policy. If you're writing a law school admissions essay or a scholarship essay and you disclose something, that we will not be requiring reporting on those types of disclosures. Okay, so that's the student bucket when it's involving a student in their capacity as a student, as somebody who's learning in our classrooms at the University of Washington. We've got the second bucket, and this is when an employee has either been alleged to have done something or experienced something, right? So if you have a supervisory role, and this could theoretically include students, although this would be really rare. You could have student employees who are able to boss around their peers, basically, right? They might be allowed to assign work. We would consider them supervisors. So if you are in a supervisor position, then the employees who are in your line of supervision, you are responsible for reporting disclosures that you learn involving them. Okay. So in that case, the employee would be required to share all information they have, including the impacted employee's name. And when we're talking about HR professionals, they don't get really any exceptions for the workplace. If an HR professional becomes aware of discrimination, harassment, or sexual misconduct in the workplace, they must share all information, including names. I'm sure you can already imagine that this could get a little messy, right? Because some students have both that identity as an employee and a student. And so we have some guidance to help with that. We're developing some FAQs and stuff like that. But also, if it's just really unclear, we would say, consult with us, right? Reach out and say, this is the situation I'm in. Would I be obligated to report in this situation? All right. I want to pause here. That's a lot, right? So we've got the student category. We've got this employee category. Part of the reason we have a distinction here is that federal law has heightened obligations for reporting instances involving workplace discrimination and harassment. With students, we want to sort of honor the kind of traditional way that as of today, very few employees are required to report about anything. And so we want to sort of honor that. We want to create these exceptions, make sure that students have that anonymous option, but we are going to be requiring that that information is shared. So what questions are out there right now? What questions might you, another way to put this, we're developing all these resources to help people understand this. Can you anticipate questions that University of Washington Tacoma students might have about this new policy?
Sam, if you want, you can.
Quick question, so.
In the mic. I lend my time to Sam.
Thank you. So sort of when you mention, if you're a supervisor or manager, which includes student employees, is that mainly based on the preface that the supervisor or manager is that student? And when you're talking about sharing the information, does that mean that you share the information of the student employee itself as well?
Yeah, so there's two parts to that question. So let's start with the second part of that question. So if we've got the employee who has either been alleged to have done something or has experienced something, right? that employee, if they, even if they are a student employee, their supervisor, if their supervisor learns about it, must report. So with student employees, the way we're distinguishing there is we're saying in the context of the workplace, right? So like maybe that discrimination or harassment is happening in the workplace. Then it would be very clear that we're talking about the student's employee role in that case. Or it's something that was disclosed in the workplace, right? As opposed to in the classroom or something like that. Then we would say that that's a student employee and that the supervisor is required to share, including names. So that was that second part about if the employee themselves is a student, how are we thinking about that? Now, again, most of the time we want to think about students in this category. So we've got those sort of narrow bands, like within the workday or within the workplace, student employees could be subject to this obligation to report, right? Now, if a student employee themselves has supervisory roles, like I'm not sure exactly what that might look like, but for example, I was a graduate student, and as a graduate student, I could teach my own class and I could have teaching assistants. Those teaching assistants technically have the same job title as me. They're the exact same level as me. I can't hire or fire them, but I can boss them around, right? I can assign work to them. So that's what we're saying. Because I can assign work to them, I'm their supervisor. And even though I'm a student in that yellow box, because I'm acting in a supervisor role, if one of my teaching assistants revealed something to me, I would have to report that.
Thank you for your question, Sam. Anyone else have questions? Hearing none? Feel free.
All right. So just to give you sort of a heads up about where this is all going to fall in that timeline, when you can expect this, we've been kind of working hard since that January 19th resolution was signed, getting everything ready to meet our obligations for the federal government and maybe hopefully protect the university from claims in that regard. So to that end, we hired some new training specialists and case managers. So I'm one of the new training specialists. We just brought in a new case manager a couple of weeks ago, Corey Poland, who's very fabulous. We've been meeting with our partners across the University of Washington, including ASUWT Tacoma. And just so you know, we got to you before we got to the Seattle students. So
Really?
This is sort of a practice run for them, I guess.
Even though we're this late? Wow.
Part of this is because of the way this timeline is so compressed. Everything's kind of being pushed and pushed and pushed because we had to write that new policy. And then that new policy had to go to the Department of Education. And then it had to go through all the lawyers. And now it's sitting at the Faculty Senate. And so we're just now to the point where we feel confident that we have 95% of accurate information about that policy. So we're able to get out in the community. ASUWT came first, which I'm really excited about. We did get to the Graduate Student Senate already. So there's that. So we've got, in July, we're going to be launching that new office that I talked about, the CRC. It's called Civil Rights Compliance Office. We're going to be publishing that new policy. We'll have a new website that I've been working on. And then, so that you'll become aware of that because we're going to be blasting you with emails and all sorts of stuff. So you will know that this happened. Now, the thing is, of course, that we do not expect students, staff, and faculty to instantaneously understand how everything changes in July, right? So we're going to come back out into the community. I might be back here in the fall, telling you more as we have more clear, concrete details about everything. We're going to be back out in the community through the autumn and winter, working with everybody, helping them understand their new obligations. This is especially important, I think, for employees to understand their reporting obligations. We're going to be hiring a couple more coordinators to help us do all this work. And that resolution also is going to require some new trainings, including student training. So there's going to be a new civil rights training. We're targeting April next year for the student version of that training, January for the employee version of that training. So that's something that you will be seeing coming up as well. But that's our kind of broad trajectory. You can kind of imagine there's going to be a lot of work going on over the next 6 months or so. We do expect to be reaching back out to our partners across UW, including here in the ASUWT folks at Tacoma and other partners across the Tacoma campus. Again, I'm super excited to be here. If they could send me here every day, that would be fabulous because I would never have to go to Seattle again. And I would love that. Seattle's great for like concerts and stuff, right? But if I could stay in Tacoma, I'd be very, very happy. So I'm looking forward to coming back in the fall. Before I wrap up, are there any final questions for me about any of this stuff coming up?
If a student who's watching this after the fact and has any questions, where can they ask questions?
Yeah, really excellent question. So there's the short answer is they can reach out to the office, so to speak. And even though we don't have the office yet, Civil Rights Compliance Office, we do have an email address. And our email address is civilrights@uw.edu. And if for some reason you want to reach out to me directly, I'm very happy to receive any outreach from anybody in the community. So my email is jcbeck, jcbeck@uw.edu.
Perfect. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. And I think now. I have my script in front of me. I'm gonna walk and talk. And now we're about to enter into executive session as defined by RCW 42.30.110 and section 205.02 of the ASUWT bylaws. An executive session is a closed meeting that allows the board to discuss specific confidential matters such as personnel matters, legal matters, negotiations, or HR-related matters without public presence. This is to ensure a candid and protected discussion. During this session, the board will meet to discuss SAFC committee appointments for the upcoming academic year. After the board concludes discussion, we'll reconvene in an open meeting. Note this is only for discussion and votes will be made publicly in the meeting. With that, I ask for all members of the public to leave the room with the exception of our special counsel, the SAFC current chair, and then we will begin executive session.
Like, I like said I was gonna second, but you're not supposed to say that.
I did not hear any of
It's like the
that.
mic is back on.
Okay. Okay.
Welcome back. Yeah.
This is the conclusion of executive session. Is there any motion or action to be taken?
I motion to recommend Colin Sika for 2025-2026 SAFC appointment.
I second.
Should I do individually or the whole? Okay, gotcha.
Moved by Nora, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Colin Sika will be recommended to the chancellor to be appointed to SAFC.
I motion to approve Arandi Zuniga for appointment to the SAFC 2025-2026 committee.
Is there a second?
I second.
Moved by Nora, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Rondi will be recommended to the chancellor for appointment to SAFC.
I motion to approve or to recommend Charlotte Skinner for appointment to the SAFC 2025-2026 committee.
I second.
Moved by Nora, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Charlotte will be recommended to the chancellor for appointment on the SAFC.
I motion to recommend Kaylee Lawless to next year's SAFC committee.
I second.
Moved by Nora, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Kaylee Lawless will be recommended for reappointment to SAFC to the chancellor.
I motion to recommend Moira Kelly to next year's SAFC committee.
I second.
Moved by Nora, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Motion passes. 3 yeses, 1 abstention. Moira Kelly will be appointed to SAFC or will be recommended for appointment to SAFC. Cool.
Yay.
Okay. I think after that we had finance discussion, but it was $900 to be spent.
Yeah, update, Connor was able to get the totes and shirts and the tumblers, totes, and shirts.
Cool.
Sweet.
And waiting on the sweatshirts to hear back, right? Yeah.
We're at time. Anyone want to say anything? Director updates? Advisor updates?
None. Oh, shoot, I'm not an advisor.
Chair updates. Are we meeting next week? I put a message in the chat.
I would not like to, but if we have to, I am okay with that.
That's interesting, but I'm not interested.
Let's keep the no business.
Seems tempting, but
Because if we did meet, it would be a public meeting just to do fun stuff and probably
No.
food.
Well,
But
Oh.
maybe that's fine.
yeah, you caught me off food.
okay.
But yeah, no, I feel like if there's anything important, I'll be there. But if not,
As of right now, no, unless they drop me something related to the ledge fee. But as of right now, no.
Oh, it's in my calendar, so if there's something I'll be here.
Okay. I assume it's give me things to put on the agenda then, no matter how silly it is.
okay, yay!
Motion to adjourn.
I motion to. Oh, he motions and I second.
Moved by Ben, seconded by Lucy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Bye.
Bye.